I wouldn't have even noticed it because it's not particularly well conveyed beyond the idea that you'll get pushed into corners, get overwhelmed, and get systematically taken apart. It's a delicate balance which thankfully they achieve for the most part. It's a very Now, this is a case of serendipity if I ever saw it. Metal Arm's Glitch in the System is a game that you've probably never heard of. But worry not, because your pal TGX is here to educate you on things you probably missed out on, probably never heard of, and probably couldn't care less about. So, hopefully by the end of this you'll be upgraded to the levels of could care less. That means you do care. Hell, it's something I'd heard of all of once before picking it up. I'd heard its name and a 2-word description of rather excellent, and it's a rare instance of a game completely surprising me. I didn't quite know what to expect, and what I got was nothing short of kick ass. But let's back up a minute. Metal Arm's Glitch in the System is not an offshoot of Metal Gear Solid, but rather the only full game made by Swingin' Ape Studios. It was released in 2003 and published by Sierra of all companies, though this was after Vivendi purchased Sierra, so this was really published by Vivendi. Swingin' Ape Studios was a studio founded by Mike Starrich, Steve Rank, and Scott Goffman in 2000 that only lasted a few years, because after Metal Arm's Glitch in the System in 2003, they were acquired by Blizzard Entertainment before it became Activision Blizzard, and was then contracted to make a third-person shooter based off of StarCraft Ghost, which ended up in development hell, and whatever was left of Swingin' Ape Studios at that point evaporated into the ether, and we haven't heard anything since, even though it took Blizzard nearly 10 years to officially cancel StarCraft Ghost. And with that, Swingin' Ape went down as a one-hit wonder and a cautionary tale of what could have been. But today we take a look at their lone game, and man, is it a doozy. Unlike my usual affairs, I don't want to waste any time. This is the type of game that punches you right in the face from the word go. This is the proper way to start a game. Alright, I guess this game wants me to talk about the soundtrack. This game's lead composer was one Keith Aram, who was also lead sound designer, writer, co-director. Okay, is there anything this dude doesn't do? Renaissance man if I ever saw one. What you just heard, the main theme, instantly sets the tone for the game. It's fast-paced and frenetic techno with industrial overtones. Not industrial as in like Nine Inch Nails, like literal industrial sounds. You hear that and it instantly pumps you up to kick some robot ass. The rest of the soundtrack is a bit of a spectrum. You have ominous orchestral music, which is okay. It sets the tone for the more tense moments in undiscovered locations where you're not quite sure what to expect, and in that regard it does the job it needs to, but comes across as slightly generic and unmemorable. Then there are a few pieces that have an ethereal feel to them. Once again, it does the job when you're in the spots they fit into, but they're not what I would call memorable. Then on the end of the spectrum, you have everything else, otherwise known as the kick-ass, knock-your-socks-off pieces. These usually consist of hardcore techno or epic orchestral, otherwise they have a string section that more closely resembles hard rock. This is the side of the spectrum that I absolutely approve of. Of course, some of this side still veers into the lighter areas. But there's still a good portion of pieces that both fits the feel and absolutely kicks ass. So the soundtrack is a bit of a mixed bag, but what's good is really damn good, and when this game reaches a fever pitch, I could think of few things better to have as a backing track. That is, when it's actually played. There's a significant portion of gameplay where the music is quiet or not even there, which certainly puts a damper on the music's enjoyability. But when this is the sound that accompanies combat at all other times, I think I can manage, and as you could probably see from the gameplay, Metal Arm's Glitch in the System pretty much speaks for itself. What is this game? Well, it's an absolutely frantically paced run-and-gun platform shooter with aspects of puzzle solving. To those of you in the audience who had a PS2 growing up, that combination of nouns may give you an eerie sense of deja vu, and you're right to believe that because Metal Arm's glitch in the system is in many ways almost identical to one Ratchet & Clank. I'll say that right off the bat. Now, Metal Arm's glitch in the system came out in 2003, the same year as Going Commando. In fact, coming out exactly 1 week apart in November 2003. So did Metal Arms rip off Ratchet & Clank wholesale, or did two studios come up with essentially the same idea within a year of each other? Who's to say, but as I've always said, there's nothing wrong with derivatives as long as it's a good derivative, and there are even a few ways that Metal Arms outdoes Ratchet & Clank, but at the same time, Ratchet & Clank absolutely trounces Metal Arms in a few ways, most notably the story. That is to say, Metal Arms doesn't really have much of a story at all. It has an establishing cutscene, then most of the game just kinda happens. So the story is, you're a mysterious deactivated droid found in a junk heap named Glitch. Then you're brought back to life, given a new memory chip, and then enlisted to fight in what's called the Robot Rebellion. All of which is without your consent, I might add. Glitch's memory chips being fried basically means that you have no idea who Glitch is or how he ended up in the situation he was found in. I'll spoil now, even though this is instant intrigue, just add water, we never actually learn anything about Glitch. Who he is, where he came from, nothing. So as far as we know, he was just some dude who got necromanced, joined in on a rebellion movement by force, and instead of doing what I'd do in that situation, run around in circles and piss myself, he wins the whole shebang practically single-handedly. Never once questioning any of it. I'm sure that was something a sequel might have fixed, but... well, if the Icarus myth has taught us anything, it's that sometimes life isn't fair. And let's just say this game's ending does fly a little bit too close to the sun. This game doesn't have much story to work with as it is, and so taking away that potential plot thread makes this game's plot go from wafer thin to paper thin. Plus, it means that Glitch ends up not having much to work with. His character is to basically be the straight man surrounded by a bunch of wacky characters, and as a result, he ends up being the least interesting character in his own game that's literally named after him, a blank slate who blindly takes orders. The reason for this rebellion and the war and whatnot is established in a very long, very heavy-handed exposition dump narrated by Timmy Turner's dad.
Iron Star.
I'll try and sum this up in as few words as possible. So you're on a planet called Iron Star, and there are 3 different races of robots. The Moorbots, who created the planet and live in underground cities, droids, the main inhabitants of the planet who lived peacefully for generations, and Millbots, the evil armies of General Corrosive, who himself is an artificially created freak of nature who was made as a result of an alleged botched experiment by a scientist, Dr. Exavolt. Now, the Millbots have all but eradicated droids after a brutal war, and only one stronghold, Droid Town, remains as the home of the rebellion, which is under attack as the game starts. You got that? Good, well that's the only story you're gonna get, because from this point forward, the game splits into 5 main objectives. Protect Droid Town, prevent Droid Town's location from being revealed, rescue Dr. Exavolt, survive the Gladiator Arena, then destroy the Millbot space station to shut down the Millbots for good. This is all well and good, except those 5 points are dragged through about 10 to 12 hours worth of gameplay and just so many levels. 42 by my count. Wait. What? Was that intentional? So it's spread incredibly thin to the point that you're playing up to 3 hours to do one story objective, and like I said, most of this just happens. For example, they make a big song and dance about how mythical the Moorbots are and how nobody's seen them and lived to tell the tale, then with no build-up you just go to the Moorbot region. Kind of unceremonious given their mythical status, but unceremonious is the name of the game. What you're doing or where you're going might be briefly explained in a throwaway line or two, or sometimes what you're doing is completely left unsaid to the point that I had completely lost sight of what I was supposed to be doing at times, with long stretches of levels with no clear objective, and usually no clear villain. The only villain to get any substantial screen time is, spoilers, Dr. Exavolt. General Corrosive, the main villain, has almost 0 screen time until you fight him, so bang goes the possibility of being an effectively hateable villain. I don't hate him, I just don't care. So what this game ends up feeling like is a constant forward march to the next checkpoint, and the game hopes you just don't question anything. But remember how I said Glitch is the least interesting character in his own game? Well, you're surrounded by some really fantastic characters. When it gets down to the writing, this game is insanely clever, funny, and even raunchy at times. The cast of voice actors includes Dave Wittenberg, Dan Castellaneta, Patrick Warburton, Darren Norris, Corey Burton, among others, who between all of them combined probably have over 2,000 acting credits to their names. Especially Patrick Warburton, who made an entire career out of one voice.
My joints need regrinding, my crankshaft is bent, I can't even get my piston up.
People tell me I have a pretty good impression of Patrick Warburton.
I better. You have cancer in your ass.
The set of secondary characters are really fun and really funny. Whenever you get into a dialogue, you never know what to expect, like with Agent Shush.
Shut your VM28/9 sound hole and listen up. I'm Agent Shush, codename Shush. You never know what's right around the corner.
Then there's Krunk, who constantly gets censored like that one character from Scott Pilgrim.
I thought you were captured.
I escaped, dumbass. These s***os couldn't hold a conversation.
Dr. Exavolt, who is your average mad scientist.
Not only have I located the droid rebel command center, I am standing in the middle of it. You may initiate the invasion.
Or your dunderheaded best friend Moser. These are all great characters, and that's only some of them. Even the random flavor dialogue with the enemies is fun.
Follow my order immediately, or you will be found defective and recycled into metal chum. Let's begin.
Yeah, these guys with the heavy stereotypical German accent. Huh. You know, in retrospect, I think they might have been going for a World War II allegory with this game, basically starting from the point where Germany has taken over mainland Europe and Britain is in a desperate struggle not to fall to the Axis forces. I wouldn't have even noticed it because it's not particularly well conveyed beyond the idea that this race of warbots are exterminating the race they see as lesser to them and those who aren't killed are enslaved. Furthermore, they're being led by a single war-mongering bastard. Not exactly a World War II allegory yet, so as soon as I heard the Millbots talking deep behind enemy lines and they had thick German accents, I thought, okay, I get it. But like I said, it's not even that prominent beyond the superficial ideas, so either this was intentional and they didn't do it well enough for me to really notice, or it wasn't intentional and they made the comparisons by accident. So this is the eternal paradox of Metal Arms glitch in the system. The characters are great, the writing's great, the voice acting's great, but the structure of the story is so thinly spread and borderline non-existent that it kinda hinders everything that's good about the story, so it ends up being a mixed bag. It's great while it's there, but it's severely underutilized. So if that's all that's really important to you, then quite frankly, I can't recommend this game to you. Yeah, none of this exciting, fast-paced action matters, right? Oh wait, I got that mixed up. No, playing this game is like taking an ounce of cocaine and running into the junkyard with a sledgehammer and just going to town. This game could have the worst of everything else. It could be so ugly I puke when I look at the screen. It could have ear-splitting music and a plot like Sly 4 times Secret Agent Clank to the power of Ape Escape 3, and it would still be an absolute kick-ass game that could knock the socks off of even the most jaded gamer out there. Namely me. With that said, as I alluded to earlier, this game is basically just Ratchet & Clank. If you played any Ratchet & Clank game, you've pretty much played Metal Arms, but honestly, I think Metal Arms at its core might actually be on par with the best of Ratchet & Clank as far as overall gameplay, if not slightly better. The basic gist is, you run around a frantic, busy battlefield, shooting anything that moves, unless what moves looks like you. It's a forward march that has you take control of a number of weapons and vehicles to lay waste to hundreds and hundreds of enemies shooting at you. It's simple, straightforward gameplay done right. There's an army of millbots between you and freedom, and only you can sort shit out. One bullet at a time. And poke me with the sharp edge of an LED lighting board if this isn't the most satisfying combat I've seen in a while. In fact, understand this. Whatever negatives I bring up about this game from this point forward, none of it really matters because the gameplay is just so great. It's been said that the secret to great shooter gameplay is to start adding small details and never stop, and that's one thing that this game gets down. Where do I start? Well, you're given a wide range of weapons that each have a different situational use. You start out with just a mining laser with an auto reload function, which isn't so great, and at that point you may think this game isn't very good, but soon enough you're given more and more weapons, and that's when the game really picks up, and they all pack a serious punch. You can grind down enemies with the spew, blow them to pieces with a walloper of a shotgun, the scatter blaster, dice them up with the ripper, take them apart piece by piece with the rivet gun, or if you really just want to crack off for lunch, you can absolutely take enemies apart with the rocket launcher. The one thing that may disappoint when comparing this game to Ratchet & Clank is that Metal Arms glitch in the system doesn't really have nearly the same level of weapon variety, so you don't really have any crazy gimmicky weapons. I don't mind that so much though. If you're gonna give me weapon variety, I'd rather each weapon, in theory, be equally useful and impactful from situation to situation, in addition to all feeling satisfying to use. The less straightforward and more gimmicky a weapon is in Ratchet & Clank, the worse it usually is. Looking at you, Sheepinator. Metal Arms boiled all the good down to a limited amount of incredibly refined weapons that each kick ass to use, and I found myself using each and every one of these, which shows good balance. Maybe not every battle, but they always had time to shine. They also never give you so much ammo that you can in theory rely on any singular weapon, so it incentivizes you to be crafty and switch up your styles on a regular basis, and since all of these weapons are fun to use, this is a great thing. It's a delicate balance, which thankfully they achieve for the most part. It's a very balanced system of offensive attacks, along with the intuitive controls and movement mechanics, making for some epic pulse-pounding dodging sequences and desperate running scenarios, doing everything you can do to stay light on your feet and just survive. Just survive. Oh my god. It's kill or be killed, and y'all don't have the ball bearings to get the job done. There were a few sections where I got put into a tough spot for needing a better weapon that I just didn't have ammo for, but you can't always account for every variable like that. Great to use weapons are complemented by great to shoot enemies, and boy are these enemies fun to shoot. The details seep in when you get a look at the wide variety of damage physics and reaction animations that each of these enemies have. There are so many different damage states that an enemy can have as you fight them. You can knock off limbs or make enemies malfunction so their limbs are flailing around at random while they're still trying to shoot you. They can even end up as a pair of legs running around at random. They have no capacity to damage you at that point, but they're still technically alive. The damage states are unique for every enemy, and when you do deliver the killing blow, they explode into a million pieces with an audio-visual excellence that I will never get tired of. It can't be overstated how great the auditory aspects to Metal Arm's glitch in the system are. Everything, and I mean everything, packs such a wallop, so every fight is like id candy, watching scrap metal fly in a shower of explosions in the heat of a desperate combat situation. I could do this forever. And as I said, there are many different enemies as you go through the game. You'll start out with basic grunts with basic guns. The color is meant to indicate the weapon they possess, not that it matters, but sooner or later they'll break out the big guns. Literally. At first you'll see these guys called guards who are heavily armored and have a large halberd that shoots a spread of lasers, or they can just whack you with the halberd, so they can do ranged and melee combat, both of which can do tremendous damage. That's just not fair, but you want to know what else isn't fair? These big guys called Titans are the type of enemies that you do not want to be caught in the sights of. They have 2 chain guns and 2 shoulder-mounted rocket launchers. They will tear you apart, so you need to use clever tactics and break out your more powerful guns, or even the rocket launcher, which I named Old Faithful. Then once you get into the underground cities, that's where you need to fight what might be the mythic Morbots who created Ironstar and are said to be insanely hostile in their native environments as they said in the intro, but I can't honestly be sure if these are Morbots or upgraded Millbots because they certainly have different designs and are living in the underground cities like the intro said. They even call this the Morbot region and have these things called Swarmers who were definitely directly stated as Morbot operated and also suck as enemies, but that's besides the point. But these guys out in the open are also mingling with other enemies that are unmistakably the Millbots we've been fighting up till now, which would make no sense because as they stated in the intro, the Morbots are hostile to anyone who's not them, and some of these new enemies show up throughout the rest of the game, so either these are all upgraded Millbots in the Morbot region, or there are Morbots mingling with Millbots and this game can't keep track of what little mythology it has. Unless the Millbots are Morbots. Probably not, no. No, they just can't keep track of their own mythology. Some levels at this point in the game practically start with you already being attacked in these cities from unseen hostiles, and this is where they introduce flying enemies that do not mess around, including the ones called Snark, who have 4 limbs and 2 different types of projectiles they can shoot at you, and both of them suck. Plus, Bullet Sponge doesn't do them justice, though you do control one of them at one point, so that's fun. Those are only some of the hostiles you have to contend with. The enemy variety in this game is great. You have so many different wildly varied enemies, both in terms of attack and design. Some of them may be hard to fight, but they're all fun to kill. Even though generally in video games it's more fun and generally more visceral to kill organic life as opposed to artificial. Hey look, the perfect line to take out of context. They still do a great job at making killing these droids satisfying in a way that you couldn't really do for organic enemies without getting an M rating. If there's one knock I can give the gameplay, it's that when things get busy, the performance can take a serious dip. I'm playing the Gamecube version, and as ever, it's the middle ground between the PS2 and Xbox versions, and for what it's worth, the Gamecube version looks great with a clean 480p picture and an attempted 60 FPS. I say attempted because it fluctuates like crazy. If I had an FPS counter on screen, it would look more like a timecode for how much it fluctuates in the heat of battle. It's very livable for the most part, but if you want the best version for performance and visuals, probably best to pick the Xbox version, or the re-release for Xbox 360. With that said, there's one enemy that I've left out until now because it's a special case. There's one enemy that will fight you as well as the Millbots indiscriminately and kinda causes a lurching tonal shift when they show up. I'm pretty sure they were never never really established, they just kinda show up, but they're called zombie bots, which would be so much more efficiently named if they were just called zombots, so you can probably take a guess what they are. They're reanimated scraps of robot coming together to form a whole. They have a bunch of health, but thankfully only have melee attacks. They're good for clearing out enemies you'd rather not deal with because they attack the millbots if they don't detect you, but when they're on your tail, they can be a horrible problem, especially seeing as you have to knock them down twice before they stay down. There's one part in particular where I died a bunch of times to a swarm of these things on a small island surrounded by water, so if you stand and fight, your chances of survival are minimal, and if you try and circle strafe and fall back, there's a good chance you'll fall into the water and die. And this may be funny, but this is on the easy setting. I made the mistake of playing this on normal on my first playthrough around 2015, but let me tell you, this game is very unforgiving. I'm not going to say this game is hard, strictly speaking, for the most part, but it's very easy to die. In a fair fight, while you're fighting a horde, have plenty of health and ammo, and are free to maneuver around, it's fair in its difficulty, but the ease in which things can go south if you're caught in a tough spot is very skewed, and some of these areas in the later parts of the game practically force you to hide in a corner and chip away at the hordes with so many enemies. Flying enemies, armored enemies, padded together with innumerable amounts of regular enemies in between, with checkpoints fairly regularly, but not regularly enough at times, especially once you get to the later levels where even on easy, things can get very harrowing. I can't imagine what this game would be like on hard because it took me a few months of playing it on and off to beat it on normal, so heed my warning, start on easy. Yeah, you could just accuse me of sucking at games like so many have done before, and for the record, I'm generally average or slightly above average. I just don't usually play games 20 times before talking about them. If you've played a game 20 times, yeah, it's gonna look like the average player sucks at playing your favorite games. Me? Have an axe to grind? So chances are you're gonna die, and you're gonna die a lot on your first, second, or third playthroughs. You'll get pushed into corners, get overwhelmed, and get systematically taken apart. This isn't the case with every level, but they have some pretty hefty walls to get past, as you get into the later parts of the game especially. And it doesn't help that I don't think the Gamecube's controller is really well suited for dual stick shooters. The game's controls are good, but I find the Gamecube's thumbsticks are kinda stiff and tend to be a bit overly resistant, like it snaps back to neutral with pretty decent force, and so it feels like you're always fighting against the thumbsticks. That combined with the C-stick's lack of, well, stick, doesn't help. So if it looks like I'm missing a lot, it's a combination of dual analog shooters never not having a hard time getting the controls just right, and the controller itself not being the best for this type of game. Though some of this is mitigated by a soft lock-on, but the aiming can still feel the slightest bit inaccurate. I think the easiest levels are, ironically, the levels where you're not actually playing as Glitch. There's one level where you're plodding along as Moser, and probably the most boring level because he's so grossly overpowered that nothing can harm him. Most enemies dying in a single swipe of his mighty fist. Or how about that one level where you play as Crunk and all you have to do is take control of various enemies using the newly introduced control tether. It's a very one-note level. There's even the requisite vehicle levels where you have to race against time in a vehicle that has a tendency to get flipped over on a regular basis. There are even vehicles that appear in regular levels, and I have fond memories of jacking the Sentinel tank without the enemies noticing and subsequently eradicating everything within a 2-mile radius. This is how we roll in my charging station, bitch. It's a shame they don't give me a gap wide enough to get into most of the compounds, otherwise this game would have been over in 5 minutes. This is opposed to the loader, which is a loader of shit. It just makes you a bigger target because the guns don't do much and the grabbing mechanism is more trouble than it's worth. Plus, the vehicles you're in don't have their own health bars. You have the exact same health in or out of the vehicles, which is dumb and kind of a massive oversight on the developer's part. It's a pretty obvious thing to add vehicles with their own health bars. Why they don't have it is just baffling, really. Then there are the levels which are just massive turret sections. This just in, turret sections continue to not be fun. Turrets also blow pretty hard when you're using them in the battlefield. It just means you can't dodge, and this game is at its best when you're running like a greased up Scotsman through a bathhouse and shooting like a neglected middle child with anger management issues. As for the level design, this game is very linear. It has sectioned off levels that you can fight through. It's not quite a hallway shooter because there are some open environments and a lot of opportunities for verticality with launch pads, zip lines, and so on, so you can get a vertical advantage and hide in the skies if you need to. And this also gives you opportunities for collecting secrets, new weapons, health upgrades, and so on. I'll get back to that in a minute. The early levels are very linear because it's basically a very long, very straight canyon, but later levels have very clever level design with different means of progression. You have the open field type levels with so little cover it's a Mexican showdown practically, and then you have some interiors which are a mixed bag. When they get circuitous and creative, the interior levels are very fun with the secrets and alternative paths, like how you're able to go through the ventilation system to avoid direct fights with the grunts, but then there are times when the levels do become multi-level corridor shooters, and that can get very tiresome when there's there's no way to outmaneuver your enemies as you're trapped in a very tiny space to fight them. The point is, the more open these levels are, the better. Even if they're limited in cover, levels like the Wasteland levels or the later levels where you have to infiltrate different military compounds with a bunch of different buildings you can go to, both optional and otherwise, this is where the game is at its best. The other major dysfunction with the level design is the somewhat abundance of instant death traps. I literally fell into a pit within the first 8 minutes of gameplay because I took a literal step in the wrong direction and fell off a platform to my death. That's how easy it is to die. For whatever reason, any sort of liquidy substance is death, and this stuff is everywhere in too many levels, and in some of the more open levels being there in place of walls, which is fine in most cases assuming you're not on a small platform suspended above instant death, except that happens a lot. So if you get into a fight in this situation, you're basically forced to stay in place, otherwise it's too easy to fall to your death. There are times where the bodies of water make sense, like in the rivers of the level They Live. Yeah, I can get behind all of these waste rivers running through decrepit wastelands, but when you have lava rivers running through your own compound, it's just needless. There was one part where I was just doing my own thing, circle strafing and kicking ass, when out of nowhere I fell into a lava pit that had its cover blown off that I didn't even know was there, so that pays credence to the whole easy to die thing that this game has going for it, even in the levels that aren't necessarily hard. And sometimes even in the best and most open levels, the design can have issues that go beyond instant death. There was more than one level where I genuinely didn't know what I was supposed to do to progress. There was one level called Infiltrate the Compound where I was running around like an idiot for a dog's age, trying to find out where to go next, epic music blaring in my ear for the gripping scene of running around like an idiot. Now this is what I call exciting gameplay action. I eventually found this control panel that did nothing when I pressed it, so I thought I was doing something wrong. Turns out I have to go to this nearby shack that could have been any shack, and there's an arcade machine that I can get on that will let me take control of an enemy. Only then can I press the control panel to get an elevator to come down. Then I can get off the arcade machine and go over to the elevator, and only then does it take me to the next level. What is that? It's a contextual action that you've never needed to do before, and you wouldn't know you needed to do it until you've already done it. What kind of obtuse crap is that? How are you supposed to naturally come to that conclusion? Then there are other times where the way forward just isn't obvious due to poor level design choices. Level design tip: don't have necessary items for progression high up if we've never had a reason to look up to that point in the game, or this later level with a really hard climbing sequence. Let us know somehow whether or not that's what we need to do and we didn't just miss something tiny off in the corner. The amount of times I missed something important for progress because it was in the least intuitive spot possible, you wouldn't believe. It was to the point that when this game glitched, I had to question if it was an intentional design choice, like when this necessary platform wouldn't lower. I had no idea if this was supposed to happen and I missed something, or if this was just a glitch. Nope, just glitched. Oddly fitting. But when these levels get circuitous and give you plenty of optional paths, that's when this game is at its best, especially when they reward your exploration with the secret pickups. You might get a health pickup or 3, but you get enough of these usually because they fall out of deceased enemies, as well as currency, and they never despawn, so having them in secret areas, even the super health pickups, aren't really necessary, though going back to get health left over from earlier battles when you need it can kill the pace a bit, so maybe I'm wrong. The absolute best pickup in the game is the health upgrade. With each one of these you find, you get a new bar of health. The only other games I've seen with a mechanic like this are the medieval games, and like those games, you basically need to get every single one of these health upgrades to keep pace with the challenges you face in the game, because when you get to the later levels, you need all the health you can get, so it might be worth looking up a walkthrough just so you can get the most out of your health as you play, which I guess I didn't focus on, so maybe that was my problem. The other secret collectible you can get are these golden chips. You also get the speed chips if you beat the levels in a fast enough time. These are good to get if you plan on playing this game multiplayer anytime soon, as they unlock new multiplayer levels, but personally, I've never played this game multiplayer and probably never will, so they're useless to me. But one of the other things you can find in secret areas that could arguably be more useful than health upgrades are weapon upgrades. To compare this to Ratchet & Clank, the weapons in those games level through use, which in hindsight I've never really been the biggest fan of, because it practically forces you to upgrade weapons to their maximum potential, then never use them again, so you end up using weapons that aren't fit for the current situation because you're trying to upgrade them. These upgrades are hard to find, and it's a bit arbitrary as to which weapon upgrade you'll end up finding around the level, but it's a system that rewards exploration and gives you a tangible reward and makes gameplay easier as it goes on. Each weapon can only be upgraded as far as level 3, and you almost need some of these weapons to be level 3 by later levels. The Rivet Gun goes from the most useless weapon in the game to probably the most useful by level 3, because it goes from little pincer weapon to supremely accurate contained explosive module that can take later enemies apart like a cake in the presence of your mum. The fully upgraded spew may go through ammo like I go through cheap vodka, but it's so gratifying gratifying to barrel through these grunts like a hot knife through butter with hundreds and hundreds of bullets, though strangely, a weapon that becomes less useful at level 3 is the rocket launcher, or the barrage cannon if you will. It splits off into multiple rockets, but also splits off with a scatter that's a bit too far, so at close range before they split off it's useful, and at long range once the rockets have a chance to home in on a target that are useful, but at medium range they have the tendency to utterly miss your targets. If you don't find new weapons or find the upgrades to your weapons, you can also buy them from the shop. It's a little hard to know where Shady and Mr. Pockets might be, and it's a little hard to know what they're going to sell you, and if you are going to end up just being given what they're going to sell you for free later on, so it's a balancing act to maintain so you don't misuse the washers you get for killing enemies, destroying the set dressing, or just exploring, which you never seem to have enough of. You always know they're around when they're around by the repetitive percussion soundtrack.
Over here.
Then beyond all that, you have the throwable items. Most of these are exceedingly rare, so they were victims of the OP paradox, so I never seem to use them when it was appropriate. The grenades are given away like candy and are your only means of explosives early on, which can also be flung with the slingshot, but later things like the EMP grenade and the recruiter grenade are insanely useful, the former being a stun grenade, useful for when you're wanting to use the control tether to take enemies over, and the latter, as implied by the name, bringing over enemies to your side, which can turn the tide of battle in a second, especially in the later parts of the game with enemies that will heal other hostiles as you fight. Now they heal you with the power of electricity. As for the control tether, you get that in an early mission, and if you can tether an unaware enemy, you can take them over and even walk through hostile areas undetected, assuming you're passive. And you can do this for, as far as I'm aware, any enemy, so if you get control of one of the titans, it's over. You can lay waste to everything in your path. Double rocket launcher style, baby. But I wish enemies would self-destruct as soon as you decide to leave their mines, because once you clear out a room, your mind-controlled enemy still has health. So as soon as you leave them, you still need to fight them. So I just ended up pointing at the nearest wall and rocket launchering myself to death, which takes forever. The control tether is mandatory at times, but it's also worth breaking out just to save your own skin from time to time and see how many enemies you can take out on what amounts to 1 health bar. But as I alluded to earlier, there are also times where you take control of enemies and have to clear the way using arcade cabinets that you sometimes have to find chips to. This is usually the case for the slightly more complex gameplay puzzles, or you just need to blow shit up and open the way from the other side. That's fun though, I will admit. It's nice using these characters to sneak past because it's part of the game where nothing's shooting at you, and the contrast is nice, but that all changes as soon as you open fire. Stealth also exists as regular glitch, kinda, which can make for some lesser levels where you need to try and take control of an enemy so you can go into a previously inaccessible area undetected, or just have to make sure not to be seen or face the wrath of God itself. Usually you can get through these even if you're caught, you just need to fight through, and the stealth isn't that well made anyway, but there's one level in particular which is probably the low light of the game where you have to sneak into the Millbot production line and impersonate a Millbot. If you get caught, you instantly fail, even though you have about 10 weapons at your disposal that can easily deal with this issue, so it's that old chestnut. Forced stealth in an action game, and it's no less obnoxious here than any other game, especially when you need to break open all of these lockers to get an item, but the game very deliberately doesn't tell you which locker the item is in, but then you have to return to the exact spot you were in so the robot monitoring you doesn't catch on to you being an impersonator, but it's very particular with where you need to stand, so this entire level is balls. It just sucks. It really pays dividends to the knowledge that Metal Arm's glitch in the system lives or dies on its pace. For most of the game, the pace is lightning quick, and so I can overlook many of the flaws because the game is so fun, but this level in particular is a pace killer, and by proxy it kills the game temporarily. I wouldn't be surprised if someone stopped here. That said, the wrench is a bit of an odd item, but that's because it's a heavily contextual item. You only really need to use it in a handful of situations because you can take yourself apart with it. So it's kinda like the fake death pill in MGS3. In one case, you have to take yourself apart and have to rebuild yourself on the other side of a production line, and in the other case, it's kinda genius. To contextualize, once you find Dr. Exavolt, it turns out he's working for the Millbots, and he betrays you, revealing the location of Droid Town to the Millbots, so the town gets bum-rushed, and Glitch gets captured and put into several levels of Coliseum, while the rest of the droids go into hiding, and you're given limited weapons and one goal: survive. You see, these are probably the hardest levels in the game. You have to fight several titans with almost no weapons or health recharge. I died and died and died until I got lucky. At this point, I was absolutely not questioning my choice to pick the easy setting. But then you reach the level Fall to Pieces, which is the biggest clue ever. I couldn't even tell who I was fighting, he was so big. That might have been General Corrosive himself, but I'm not sticking around to find out. Where the wrench comes in is you have to go into one of these undercover areas where nobody can see you, then you use the wrench to take yourself apart. So once they destroy your cover, they think they've destroyed you and throw you out with the trash. It's such a clever bit of design, and I felt very clever for figuring it out. From there, you're in the home stretch. You need to get into a truck and race to the rocket that's taking off and landing on the Millbot secret satellite. I should mention I'm moving into ending spoilers here, but the story almost doesn't matter, so it's really not going to hinder your experience knowing the ending. From there, you have to fight through the satellite, which is probably the second hardest part of the game. You have to fight wave after wave of enemies as you fight through, and at one point, unintuitively, you have to go on the outside of the space station, and it's just level after level of ceaseless slaughter, inching your way ever closer until you finally reach him. General Corrosive. And I lied. This is actually the hardest part of the game. You're not even trying to fight him at this point. You see, at this point he's already won, so the only way to win at this point is to shut down the Millbots for good. You need to find 4 computer chips around the level so you can take over General Corrosive, and with the help of the barely audible Agent Shush, deactivate the Millbots. Sounds simple, right? Well, it would be if General Corrosive couldn't just insta-kill you by getting near you. Yeah, if he steps on you or steps vaguely near you, you're dead, but there's no way to prevent it. This sucks. The only way to get any sort of distance so you don't have the Sword of Damocles dangling above you is to get the speed power up, but that only lasts a few seconds. I can't emphasize enough how unfair and frustrating this boss is. I could do an anger montage if I wanted to. I won't, but I could. Finally, you stop him and the satellite explodes. At this point, the game could very easily be over as soon as you escape. You've won. But you still need to have an utterly redundant boss fight with General Corrosive who survives the crash. I don't see why I have to win this fight. I've already won. I can die and nothing would change that. I'm sure the other droids can handle General Corrosive. This boss is tough, but it's fairly straightforward. Just keep hitting him with rockets until he crumbles. Then you've won the day and all of droidkind celebrates.
Well, I'd kiss you, but I don't swing that way.
Would you do it for a Scooby snack? I don't even know what I'm going. I don't even know what this is about. It's just a joke that came to mind when I was writing the script at 4 a.m. Just I thought it was funny at that point. And then Exavolt gets away.
Not through with you yet, glitch.
And never has there been a more fitting use for the phrase famous last words. I may have spent a good chunk of this crapping on Metal Arm's glitch in the system, but that's because there are a bunch of little things I don't like, on top of 1 or 2 things that make this game kick ass, namely the gameplay. And that's all that matters, that so much of this game is just run-gun fun at its purest and most exciting, with a tremendous pace that means that most of the time I don't have time to process the finer details, and most of the flaws almost come across as cute, like they're clearly markings of an unrefined game, but make Metal Arm's glitch in the system all the more endearing for it, as if it's made by flawed human beings with a vision. Not robots who had to sandblast everything down to utterly polished but bland mediocrity. This game is just damn fun to play, and I implore anyone who's a fan of run-and-gun games to give this one a try, even if it's just Ratchet & Clank but not as good. So if you're a Ratchet & Clank fan but have extracted all the fun you can get out of those games, then this one's for you, especially if the recent Ratchet & Clank games have left you cold like they have me. So rejoice, ye faithful, you have more of that thing you like but with less polish and a worse story. Huzzah! As for Ratchet & Clank proper, I know there's a lot of people who want me to touch on that series, understandably, but the fact is, I don't really want to talk about Ratchet & Clank until I'm inspired to do so, and right now I'm not feeling inspired, you dig? Because otherwise I risk creating subpar products, and then nobody wins. You see, my personal philosophy is, don't give people what they think they want. Give them what they didn't know they wanted. And then bend over and kiss your ass goodbye, because then your channel's gonna die. This video was brought to you in part by my lovely patrons. I thank you for your continued support. If you want to become a patron for TGX, the link is in the description. And I wouldn't necessarily call this game a platformer strictly speaking, but there are platforming sections, and while most of them are fine, there are several areas where the instant death pit trap issues come up, and I die to these pits during mandatory platforming sequences,